greatest power grab in the history of the world. Is it happening right now? USA senators are trying to stop the World Health Organization treaty, but are they going to be able to do it? This week, the greatest loss of human rights and freedom is about to occur. Think the Soviet takeover of Russia was bad? Think the Chinese Revolution was bad? How about Rome, ancient Babylon? They were nothing compared to what is happening this week in Switzerland, and the media is completely silent about it. There are no armies involved in this takeover. It will happen with a simple stroke of a pen. A bunch of lawyers are involved. Before we begin, a quick shout out to Jonathan Merrill for helping us research this topic. Now, as we reported last month, the member states of the World Health Organization, the WHO, are gathering in Switzerland next week to negotiate final terms of a treaty that will give the WHO authority over the healthcare of all nations, including the USA. Essentially, they are creating a health dictatorship. Want to know how bad this dictatorship is going to be? Just click on the link down in the description to our previous video. Find out. Now, conservative senators in the U.S. are pushing back, trying to reinforce congressional power to authorize treaties, what the law is. This is an incredibly big deal, as this treaty will cause World Health Organization policies to supersede the laws of the member nations in regard to both pandemics and everyday healthcare and other things that they are going to say are related to healthcare, like climate change and LGBTQ rights. As we said, this will be a dictatorship if passed. The draft they are writing next week will be legally binding on all of the world's 194 member nations and will give the WHO the authority to subjugate the member countries to lockdowns, all sorts of medical treatments, surveillance, carbon taxes, gender transitions, and censorship of what they think is disinformation and fake news. It may even result in a UN Gestapo-type police force replacing our current police units. This is the greatest loss of human rights in history, as we said, the greatest dictatorial power grab that has ever happened. There has never been anything like it. Think Nazi Germany was bad? They are nothing compared to this. They only impacted maybe, 0.5% of the world population. This is going to impact everybody. The globalists were not able to achieve what they wanted with the pandemic itself. So they're trying to grab the power, even without a disease this time, just using a treaty. If you aren't hearing anything about this on the media, it should make you question your media. In fact, wonder why the media is focusing on UFO balloons? Maybe to take your eyes off what is much more important, which is this issue. Now, if you live in countries where there are democracies, you are probably thinking, hey, this is no big deal. The constitutions that we have prohibits our countries from entering into a treaty without legislative approval. However, the crafty globalists in the World Economic Forum and the UN, who are behind this power grab, have worded the treaty to circumvent your constitution. Yes, you heard me correctly. It appears it may be possible for presidents and prime ministers to sign away the rights of all their citizens based on these signatures and give the power to guys like Bill Gates or Elon Musk, people who have never been elected and have no right to any of this except they have a lot of money. Now, 17 U.S. senators, led by Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, introduced the No World Health Organization Pandemic Preparedness Treaty without Senate Approval Act on February 15th, which states that the pandemic accord must be deemed a treaty, thus requiring the consent of a supermajority of the Senate, 2/3 or 67 senators if you know American politics. Again, if you think this is no big deal, that no nation would ever involuntarily give up its power to a globalist organization, well, guess again. The U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary, Xavier Becerra, is helping the WHO draft this treaty. The current Biden administration is assisting this treaty to become law everywhere. If you wonder why the previous election happened and turned out the way it did, this is a big part of the reason. The globalist billionaires like Gates need a puppet government to make their takeover complete. This treaty has nothing to do with improving health, but rather is designed to take the sovereignty of nations away and give it to the World Health Organization and the UN, something we said would happen this year, 2023, when we were saying this as long as 2 years ago. This was the year they had planned to do it. This has always been their plan. Will this bill the senators are proposing save the USA and the other nations? Absolutely not. Most doubt this bill, even if approved, will stop the WHO Accord from going into effect once President Biden signs it. Quote, with all due respect to the sponsoring senators, that will not do the trick, said Francis Boyle, professor of international law at Illinois University. The reason is that the WHO Accord is drafted specifically to circumvent the Senate approval process, and instead, Congress should immediately withhold its yearly contributions to the WHO and take the United States out of that organization. Now, this is something that the previous U.S. president did, but Biden reversed it on his first day in office and put the USA back in the WHO. This is not a political issue. This isn't a Republican or Democrat issue. This is a freedom versus slavery issue. Now, remember that last U.S. election that installed this administration. And you can realize that everything that happened at that time is becoming clear in the light of this treaty. The accord itself states that it will become effective and legally binding on member states provisionally, as soon as it's signed. In other words, before any national legislatures approve it. The Biden administration can indicate that it is provisionally bringing this treaty into force upon a mere signature, and thus all the things that they can do, like declaring pandemics without the need for any kind of proof, and then making people take all sorts of medicines that they don't want to take, locking people down, even enforcing it with UN peacekeepers. You can just imagine what can happen before the legislatures even get to vote. Now, there are no other U.S. treaties that provide for provisional applications pending the Senate giving advice and consent to the treaty. This treaty is an intentional trap to circumvent the will of the people in every nation. If it was for their good, they would let the people vote on it and just present it as it is and say, hey, this is for your good. But no, they're circumventing the will of the people, which tells you that their intent is malevolent. And as we stated over and over and over again, there's nothing to compare with this in world history. Never has the entire world given up its power to non-elected bureaucrats without even a struggle. We are being bought and sold by the heads of our government, who these billionaires have put in place. Now, you might ask, why isn't something like this, something this big in the Bible? Don't you think God would warn us about a worldwide takeover, something that has never happened before? Good question. The truth is that the Bible does tell us this is coming and even how it happens. Bible scholars simply have missed it. In Revelation 17 and 18, we learn about a worldwide system known as Mystery Babylon. In Revelation 17, verse 18, it says that it rules over the kings of the earth. Notice the system isn't a king, so it's not some kind of empire. The kings still exist, but the system has supremacy over them. It commands them. And this fits with what we see may be coming down the road with this treaty. It does not fit, however, with a religion. The papacy does not rule over all the kings of the earth. Islam does not rule over all the kings of the earth, but this one might. Then in Revelation 18:23, we learn who controls the system and how they take that control. And this fits as well. For your merchants were the great men of the earth. It's merchants who take over, billionaires, guys like Bill Gates, because, and here we find out how they do it, because all the nations were deceived. Isn't that exactly what's happening? The deception of nations right now with this treaty? Because all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. And here the word is pharmakia, and you've heard this channel talk about this many times. So according to the Bible, the merchants of Mystery Babylon take power over the nations by deceiving them with something known as pharmakia. Is this treaty part of the pharmakia sorcery that is prophesied? Maybe pharmakia is a demonic spell or sorcery, one that is related to drug use, pharmaceutical use, or medicine use. Will this treaty result in the forced inoculation of the world and enforcement with a mandated health passport? That would certainly match what the prophecy says. Merchants would take over. It would be a deception of the whole world, and it would involve the satanic use of medicines. And look what immediately follows. And in her were found the blood of the prophets, saints, and all who have been slain on the earth. Revelation 18:24. Will this pharmakia result in worldwide deaths? Maybe. It is entirely likely based on what the Bible says. So if you're like me, you're wondering right now what you can do about that. That should be obvious. Pray. Pray that if it isn't God's will that we go down this path, if we're misinterpreting these passages, that God will actually prevent this treaty from passing and the horror of this taking place. However, what if it is God's will? If this is the path that God has planned all along to prepare the return of Jesus, then there's nothing we can do to stop it, nor would we want to stop it. God's will is perfect. It may be difficult for us, but it's always perfect. So if God permits this, we need to also be praying how He wants us to deal with it, how to prepare ourselves and overcome in the midst of it. How are you going to do that? I suggest you log on to lastdaysovercomers.org. There's a QR code on the screen and also a link down in the description to the site. We're holding monthly conferences starting in the summer to discuss exactly this topic. Our first 2 conferences are already scheduled, and we're in the process of filling up the rest of 2023. Never was there a more important time to learn how to prepare for the last days. Never. And once you're on the site, you can click to find out information on where our conferences will be, and if you can be notified when future conferences are scheduled. If you say, hey, I'm not close to any of these conferences, at least none of the first dozen that you're scheduling, if so, why not plan on signing up for the live streams that we're going to have with each conference and gathering a whole group of like-minded people at your house to watch it together for one admission price instead of, everybody having to pay their own. As we said, the world has never been in more danger than it is right now. Things like this have never happened in world history. Pause this video now to do what we suggested. Get on that site, sign up to find out when the conferences are, then come on back. Which makes me wonder, is the fall of 2023 going to mark the beginning of the 70th week of Daniel? Something that has never happened in world history is about to happen. It's a possibility, right? It's a possibility it could start this year. Well, obviously, we don't know for sure, but there are some very strong indications that it might. Click right here to keep watching and see why fall 2023 is more likely than any other time in the next 6 or 7 years to be the start of a tribulation. Till then, this is Nelson. And